Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Download the Inside the Birds podcast on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget to check out their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Geoff Mosher is here today. The Eagles rookies were out and about this weekend, which kind of gets you thinking about the rookie class and what they could bring to this team. And obviously, anytime the Eagles are out in the field doing things, it certainly gets you reinvigorated and excited about the team. And obviously, we got a long ways to go before they get to Brazil. But Geoff Mosher, there is stuff going on. There's a lot happening with this team as they kind of hit that next phase after the draft here. You go into the OTAs and all the mini camps and stuff. But I think one thing we do know, Geoff, as we'll take a look at some of the rookies and their potential roles this year, this is not a finished product here. There's still a lot of things that Howie Roseman can do with this team between now and by the time they get to camp.
Oh, Mike, you know the key to my heart, buddy. This is a constant expression that I use or topic that me and Adam hit on in Inside the Birds, especially after either the first week of free agency or the first few days of the draft, when you take inventory of the roster at 78 or 79, whatever it is, and you start to say, but what about this position? But what about that position? And I always like to point out, more recently, right, the Super Bowl year that they won in 2017, that cornerback was a real issue, and they didn't really address it until a week before the season when they made the trade of Jordan Matthews and the third-round pick to the Bills to get Ronald Darby, who amazingly missed 10 games that year, and they went 9-1 in those 10 games. So went to show you that maybe cornerback wasn't as bad as they thought. But the point is that and the Ajayi pick up at the trade deadline, the late May and June signings that we've seen. I think LeGarrette Blount was a May signing. There are still a lot of opportunities to improve the team from now until the season starts. And if you actually look at the list of free agents, we were talking about this, at safety right now, at guard, linebacker, there are guys who can play in this league. It's just the issues of those free agents is that there are too many guys who can play, and so it becomes a buyer's market. And the deeper you get, the lower the price tag gets. So there are certainly a lot of avenues for not just the Eagles but other teams to improve themselves. I mean, I think it's pretty unique right now, Mike, that Tyler Boyd, right? I believe he's still unsigned as we speak here. This is a guy who's been a pretty good slot receiver, and of course the Denver safety Justin Simmons, who's many-time All-Pro, is still available as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you hit that next phase, and then everybody kind of try to wait things out, see where they get to training camp. You got the rookies out there this weekend, and while most people say you can't take a whole heck of a lot, I do want to get your thoughts on some of the roles for these potential guys because, right guard is a spot that is seemingly open. There's two guys, Dylan McMahon, and he was a late-round pick, and then the other guy who was Trevor Keegan. Do you look at either of those two as are they depth pieces, or do you think any of them could be a factor in that right guard? Because right now, if you were to kind of handicap that position, is there a favorite? Is there a wild card? How do you kind of look at that? Because it seems that is the one spot that is clearly up for grabs, and there's some interesting names that people might not know a whole heck of a lot about who were actually on the field this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I never say never because I still, early in my career, still remember this, when Jason Kelce was drafted and, all of us thought, oh, yeah, he'll eventually take over Jamal Jackson's job if he makes the team, right? We're talking about a 6th-round pick here. None of us expected him to start taking reps with the ones on the first week of training camp that year. So you didn't see that coming. But to answer your question specifically, is there a favorite? Is there a wild card? The favorite is Tyler Steen. He was drafted in the 3rd round. He's had a year of development. He's had a start under his belt. May not have had the greatest rookie season, but they knew that there was some development needed there because he had played tackle mostly at Alabama and did not have a whole lot of guard at all reps other than the Senior Bowl. So they knew that this was not going to be an immediate guy that they were going to stick in there, or at least they knew by early in OTAs when they basically made Cam Jurgens the guy at right guard. So he is the favorite at the moment. A wild card, I think it's fair to say Mekhi Becton would be a wild card because he's got a contract, he's got guaranteed money, he's been a tackle his whole career, but he's also been injured a lot. He's had to redo his body a little bit, and they're, as we reported on Inside the Birds last week, they are going to look at him some at guard along with tackle. And so if this guy can play and play at a higher level because he had that talent and it just was never able to manifest because of his Jets career he was hurt or he wasn't at the right weight, and maybe now he's different, right? Then maybe you fight him with Tyler Steen and see what you get, and if he can play, then all of a sudden you have a different plan there at right guard if Tyler Steen doesn't work out. So I would put the two guys you mentioned, the draft picks, as real long shots. I think they've got to make the team first, and then if they do make the team, then they've got to continue to get development from Jeff Stoutland. The team doesn't have them in the plans to start. They have them in the plans to see what they've got, to try to develop them. And if they can get both of those guys onto the practice squad this year, I think that would be their druthers.
Yeah, that right guard position, Moshe, I'll tell you right now, it feels a lot like 2017 when Sayamala played, then they went to Warmack, and then they finally said, you know what, let's go to the guy who's just a steady Eddie, Wisniewski. It feels like maybe Matt Hennessy's that guy who doesn't get the first shot, doesn't get the second shot. They'll try plug and play, but they might be going to like a veteran kind of like Whoopi there. Hey, you know what, we got this guy just kind of sitting there, but we'll take a look at some other guys before we get there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because there are two, obviously that's a good point to bring up that they could put Matt Hennessy at right guard too. He's played there. He's obviously right now looking at a depth piece the way Steph Wisniewski was looked at when he signed in 2016, I think it was, or 17 with the Eagles. But another guy that they signed this offseason without a whole lot of fanfare, but is intriguing, is a guy named Darian Kennard. And he was on the Chiefs practice squad last year. He was a 5th-round pick of the Chiefs, and they liked him. He's a good athlete. Didn't work out for him at tackle, which is where he was drafted at. They put him in at guard. This is what we were told by Chiefs sources. They had him working at guard on the practice squad and felt like there was more potential there for the way he plays. So add him to the mix. I mean, he's a 5th-round pick. And he and his camp, we were told, thought that he would be a higher pick, thought he played at a higher level than just 5th round. So whatever the reason is, he comes here, though, with a blank slate, and if he performs pretty well, this is why I don't close the door. I remember, and I hate to keep just cherry picking one specific example, but with the offensive line, you kind of see this commonly, right? Remember when Evan Mathis was just a guy trying to compete for a job, a Bengals cast-off, and he had remade his body and got himself ready to go and compete. And next thing you know, he's one of the best guards in football. So you can't really predict who's going to kind of seize the moment and come in and really impress Jeff Stoutland. But between that guy Kennard and Hennessy, like the free agent signings, between the two kids they drafted, between Becton, between Steen, and some of these undrafted guys who are really athletic, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm not great at pronouncing some of the names, but if you go look at the UDFA class that they announced, kid from Maryland, Gottlieb, I think it's Ayuzidi, really good athlete, long-armed, I mean, everything you'd want size and measurement-wise in a offensive lineman. I mean, those guys will get looked at too.
Yeah, I always feel like, somebody kind of stands out, especially, and by the way, they brought in some interesting offense. There's an Australian kid who's gigantic, the kid from Howard, 6'8", 353 pounds. So they brought in any of the other undrafted guys. Do you hear anything about that are interesting to you? They brought in some guy like Gabe Hall is a guy that I think if you watch college football, you've probably heard of him. Kendall Milton, the running back, Georgia kid. So the other kid, the safety from LSU. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Andre Sam.
There you go. Yeah. So they have some intriguing guys. There's always, and as we know, there has been undrafted guys who have played the last couple of years on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to ask me who's going to be the one that is most likely to make the 53 this year, I would tell you Gabe Hall, because he's a guy who most scouting sources thought would get drafted sometime day 3, has some really good talent. For whatever reason, we talked about this on the podcast, Inside the Birds podcast that dropped this morning. Every once in a while, or once a year, but you don't know who it's going to be, there's a sort of a disconnect, right, between the scouting community and why a guy isn't valued as much as he should be. In other words, Gabe Hall, people will tell you from his tape, can play in the NFL, and he can be pretty good. He's versatile. He can play a lot of different techniques along the defensive line. And there are games, people who've watched him told us, that you can just see it in him. And then there are times where you just don't. And he's a good kid, like he's never had any trouble. I didn't hear of any trouble or something where, he's not a good guy or anything like that. So you see this disconnect sometimes, and that's why they become rookie free agents. And you're hoping that he comes into an environment and gets surrounded with the right people and it all clicks, because if it does, then you get yourself a pretty good player, because you know that the talent and the measurables, the athleticism, it's all there. You just need this prospect, right, to put it together and be more consistent on a snap-to-snap basis. And that hasn't happened yet for Gabe Hall, and maybe it does here with the Eagles, and you get yourself a nice rotational tackle who made the team as a rookie free agent, which, sort of like a TJ Edwards story, and you build him up and he can become a starter for you perhaps at some time. It's not likely, but you hope with that because you've seen it on tape. So that would be the guy. And then the second interesting guy, and Andrew DeCecco reported this today, and he's been on this guy for a while, is a cornerback named Sean Stevens out of Ferris State. The kid ran a 4.3. He's cousins with Joey Porter Jr. because he's the nephew of Joey Porter, Steelers linebacker legend. Really good playmaker in college, had I think 5 or 6 interceptions a year his last 2 years at Ferris. The Eagles and the Steelers were really the two teams that were on him the most in the pre-draft process. Neither team drafted him, and he wasn't even signed as a rookie free agent. He came to the rookie tryout, the rookie camp they had over the weekend as a tryout, and Andrew DeCecco reported this morning that the Eagles are going to wind up signing him. So, this is a position, obviously, the Eagles are, again, putting a lot of bodies at, trying to leave no stone unturned. And so I would watch out for that kid.
Ain't that the truth, man? They got a room full of corners back in there. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. You can check out more on some of the undrafted guys over at InsideTheBirds.com. They have a whole list of some of the guys. One of the things you guys talked about on the pod that I was like, talking about this week, where we mentioned the right guard, Steen. Is there a favorite? Is there a wild card? Where do you think they're at tight end right now with that position? I was a little surprised they haven't addressed that. I mean, in the draft that they didn't address it. So where do you see that position throughout these mini camps and the OTAs as they get to camp?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike, and it's sort of as we get deeper into the offseason and start to do our roster examination stories. There are a number of positions on the Eagles team that once you start getting past the starters and you're looking at the depth, you see a lot of bodies, but you're not sure who are the best bodies at that position. We always say depth isn't how many people you have in a certain position. It's how many people who can actually play in the NFL that are going to be a benefit to your team at that position. And if you look at tight end, obviously after Dallas Goedert, it's sort of like I don't know who's going to step up and replace the Jack Stoll role, right? That Y tight end. They signed CJ Uzomah. He had some major injuries, I believe, with the Jets last year. So you really don't know if you're getting the same kind of player that he was when he was with the Bengals. They've got Albert O that they brought back on a 1-year deal after the trading for him last year, but he didn't really show you much. One of those rookie free agent signings we were just talking about as a tight end, whose name escapes me. I think McClellar, I think is his last name. So you have him. You've got E.J. Jenkins. I mean, you've got I don't have the depth chart in front of me. I think there's another name, but it just goes to your point that after Dallas Goedert, you really don't know who's going to be your number 2. And Grant Calcaterra, of course, the incumbent, who had an okay year last year, but really didn't emerge the way I think people were hoping. So that's just one of those positions. You could say that the same thing at right guard, right? And the same thing at cornerback, where once you get into the subs and the backups, it's kind of anybody's game. It's going to make camp pretty competitive, if you ask me.
Yeah, no doubt. And one area where I think we talked about this with Andrew on Thursday, might have been you on Wednesday, but one area where we looked at with the rookies coming in, because I don't know what they're going to do with Cooper DeJean, but you got safety all of a sudden has become a very interesting situation with Sidney Brown and Gardner Johnson and Reed Blankenship, and if they use Cooper in that spot.
I'm really curious to see where. I think that long term he's going to be a safety. Short term, I think that they're going to try him out in a bunch of different spots.
Was he running with corners this weekend, or did they just kind of have them doing like no positional stuff?
Yeah, you can't take anything out of rookie camp. But even Nick Sirianni said that they don't even look for. I think somebody asked, "Are the rookies swimming during camp because there's so much?" And he said, "No, because we don't give them anything. You're basically just have them out there running around and seeing athleticism." So there's really not a whole lot to glean from that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously everybody's kind of waiting to see what are they going to do with Cooper, where are they going to play him, where does he line up, what room is he kind of being a part of. I think he'll be one of the by the way, the Tennessee tight end is McAllen Castles. I think you were searching for him from the University of Tennessee. He was an undrafted rookie free agent there. But, yeah, what room Cooper gets in there. But everybody was out there, right? I mean, I think Quinyon – there was a lot of video of him and Quinyon Mitchell running together. That's why I wasn't sure if they had him in a specific area or not.
I'm sorry. So again, what about Quinyon Mitchell?
There was some video of Cooper and Quinyon running like drills together. So I didn't know if they were like, "Hey, you're going to run with the corners," or did they just throw all the defensive backs in an area and they're just kind of doing stuff together.
Yeah, it could be one or the other. They obviously don't let media watch a lot of that part of practice, if any. So it's hard to tell. But again, like everything that happens over the camp it's just. Are you guys in shape after, taking all your 30 visits, eating steak every other night, getting wine and dine? That's all that they're trying to figure out.
I know this seems like a complete out of left field type of conversation, but with the new kickoff rules, is there somebody that they like that kind of – is that going to be a position that you have to take a lot more consideration of who's doing that?
I don't know. You think Justin Fields is on the market now for traded?
What was that all about?
Steelers. I don't know. That's kind of crazy. Let's just hope Jalen Hurts is not back there to return kicks just because he's really good at running with the football.
Yeah. Well,
the Eagles are usually on the forefront of that type of thing, and it does look like they have. They brought in the kid Jakeem Grant, right, from where did he go to school? Was it A&M? I forget it, but he's a dynamic returner. We know DeJean has return skills. A couple of the other players that they have been returners. So. The kid Aeneas Smith that they drafted was a punt returner / kick returner, I believe. They've obviously focused on it, but I don't know if that's just because all you have there is really Britton Covey. You don't have Boston Scott anymore. If they just wanted to have depth there and sort of looking at guys that are good for it, or if it's really an intent of theirs to really try to use this new rule. And
I'm intrigued by the new rule and see what that does for some of these guys. If it elevates somebody, Definitely. If somebody is makes the team for that. I mean, you had, basically a kicker and punt returner. A kick returner on the roster, Boston Scott, who did it most of the time, who essentially did nothing. Mm-hmm. I mean, right? They no returns at all. He took that spot up, but. Now, by the way, speaking of Boston Scott, I just saw Rashad Penny signed with Carolina today, so he is now out of the mix. So now you're down, not that they were going to bring Penny back, but you've now lost Scott and Penny. So we know Saquon will take a lot of those carries, but as we kind of talked about last week on Football at 4, you can go back and listen to our conversation about that running back room. They've now lost another guy in the running back room. So that's another area that we didn't get to today where depth at that position, Shipley, Gainwell, and not a whole heck of a lot else. So a lot of short. I'm talking about adding those guys into the kick returning mix. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure they'll get tested, and I am sure the Eagles have a plan. It is funny because as soon as that rule became official, I think did someone immediately sign Cordarrelle Patterson?
Yes,
or something like that. The guys like that are going to get more looks now.
Yeah. All right, Geoff Mosher, check out the Inside the Birds podcast. The last 2 podcasts have been good ones on the depth on offense and defense on both sides of the ball. So check those out, and you can get that on any podcasting platform. Just search Inside the Birds. And, of course, check out the YouTube channel for more Inside the Birds and Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Geoff Mosher, take care, buddy.
All right, Mike, see you.